Daf Yomi Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 74. Top of the page, the first line is the Mishnah, starting with Elu Asurin. Elu Asurin ve'oisrim v'choshu ye'nesak ve'oizav v'ayros lebuvim. These following items are themselves forbidden, and any amount of them renders other items with which they become mixed forbidden. Wine used for a libation, and objects of idol worship, and hides with a tear opposite the heart, indicating the idolatrous practice of sacrificing hearts of live animals. We just had a Rufa this past Parsha yesterday. And this halacha also applies to an ox that has been condemned to be stoned. See Exodus 21:28. From which it is prohibited to derive benefit even before its sentence is carried out. And it applies to a heifer whose neck is broken when a person is found killed in an area between two cities and the murderer is unknown. See Deuteronomy 21:1-9, which is likewise forbidden from the time it is taken down to the river to be killed. In these cases, if the animal becomes mixed in a herd of similar animals, all of the animals in the herd are forbidden. של יום הכיפורים בכל אנשי נשחטו בזרע הרי אלו אסורים ואוהסים בכל השבוע. And this halacha also applies to birds designated for the purification of a leper. See Leviticus 14:1-6, and the shorn hair of a Nazarite, Numbers 6:18, and a firstborn donkey, Exodus 13:13, and meat that was cooked in milk, Exodus 23:19, and the scapegoat of Yom Kippur, Leviticus 16:7-10, and the meat of a non-sacred animal that was slaughtered in the temple courtyard. All of these are forbidden themselves, and any amount of them renders a mixture forbidden. And now the Talmud, the Gemara, says, Tana mai kachashiv, davash b'minyan kachashiv, Listenam Chatichas Nevelo. Yisrael no Kochashiv. Listenam Chametz Pesach. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. V'item Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Haitana Tarditle. Davar Shebiminyan V'Yisrael no. According to what criterion does the Tana who teaches this Mishnah reckon cases? If he reckons based on any item that is counted, meaning any item that is significant enough to be considered individually, which therefore cannot be nullified in a mixture even in a very large majority of permitted items. Let him also teach the case of significant cuts of an unslaughtered animal carcass. And if he reckons based on items from which deriving benefit is prohibited, let him also teach the case of leavened bread on Passover. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, and some say it was Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha who said, this Tana has two criteria. He reckons based on any item that is both counted and from which deriving benefit is prohibited. The Gemara challenges, but let the Tana teach the cases of perech nuts, a type of nut that has a brittle shell, and badan, pomegranates from badan, as these fruits are considered significant, and when they grow during the first 3 years after the tree was planted, they belong to the category of items that are counted and from which deriving benefit is prohibited. The Gemara responds, the Mishnah taught that case there in Tractate Orla 3:7, where perech nuts and bedan pomegranates are listed among the forbidden items that cannot be nullified in a mixture. And it is stated with regard to such items, those items to which the prohibition of orla applies render the entire mixture forbidden by imparting to it the status of orla, while those to which the prohibition of the diverse kinds planted in a vineyard applies render the mixture forbidden by imparting to the status of different kinds planted in a vineyard. Therefore, it is unnecessary to mention those cases here. ולסני כקורוס של בעל בבייס in חומץ בפסח מה שמעת דמולה רבי עקיבא עוד יתן להוסם רבי עקיבא מויסיב על כקורוס של בעל הבייס. The Gemara suggests, but let the Tana teach the case of loaves of a homeowner, each of which is unique and significant with regard to the prohibition against deriving benefit from leavened bread on Passover. The Gemara explains, whom did you hear who says that such loaves are not fulfilled in a mixture? This is taught by Rabbi Akiva, and he taught it there in Tractate Orla. 3:7, Rabbi Akiva adds to the list the loaves of a homeowner. And at the end of the Mishnah here, the Tana reiterates the halacha stated at its beginning, saying, all of these are forbidden themselves, and any amount of them renders a mixture forbidden. The Gemara asks, the purpose of this reiteration is to exclude what? The Gemara answers, it serves to exclude any item that is counted, but from which deriving benefit is not prohibited, or to exclude items from which deriving benefit is prohibited, but that are not counted. And now for the Mishnah. Yene section of Libo, Kulo Asubano, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Yemachal Kula Legoy, Chutz Midmei, Yene Sakshebo. The Mishnah says, in the case of wine used for a libation that fell into a wine cistern, it is prohibited to derive benefit from all of the wine in the cistern, even if the volume of the wine used for a libation was tiny in comparison to the volume of the wine in the cistern. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says all the wine in the cistern may be sold to a non-Yehudi, and the money paid for it is permitted except for the value of the wine used for a libation that is included in it. Now, the Talmud. The Gemara says, Amarav, halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, chavis b'chaviois. Avel lo b'yayin b'yayin. Lo yayin b'yayin. Shmuel amar, afilu yayin b'yayin. V'chein amarav bar Chanan, Rabbi Yochanan, אפילו יין ביין, וכן אמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני, אמר רב חנינו, אפילו יין ביין, וכן אמר רב נחמן, אמר רב בר אבו, אפילו יין ביין. Rav says the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, in accordance where a barrel of wine used for a libation became intermingled with barrels of permitted wine, but not when the wine itself became mixed with the permitted wine. And Shmuel says, even when the wine itself became mixed with permitted wine, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And likewise, Rabba Bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, even when wine became mixed with wine, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And likewise, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says that Rabbi Chanina says, even when wine became mixed with wine, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And likewise, Reb Nachman says that Rabba Bar Avu says, even when wine became mixed with wine, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Amar Rav Nachman, haloch lemaise, yain nestach, yain biyain asur, chavis b'chavis muto, stam yain, afilu yain biyain muto. Rav Nachman says the practical halacha is that with regard to wine that was actually used for a libation, wine that became mixed with wine renders the entire mixture forbidden. But if a barrel became intermingled with barrels of permitted wine, it is permitted to sell the barrels in the manner described by Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. With regard to nondescript wine of Gentiles, non-Yehudim, which is forbidden due to the suspicion that it was used for a libation, even if wine became mixed with wine, it is permitted to sell the mixture in the manner described by Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And now we turn to the next Amud Bet, top of the page, new Mishnah, with the words Gad Shel Eben. Mishnah says, Gad Shel Eben Shizov, Pasuk, Goy, Minag Vahida, Rav Shel Rabbi Yomi, Yenagev, Chacham Yiklof, Et HaZefes, Shel Cheres, in the case of a stone wine press that a non-Yehudi lined with pitch and then poured wine onto the pitch to neutralize its flavor, one may cleanse it and it is pure, meaning that wine pressed in it is permitted. And if the wine press is fashioned of wood, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says one may cleanse it, but the rabbis say one must peel off the pitch completely. And if the wine press is of earthenware, even if one peeled off the pitch, this press is forbidden. And that's the Mishnah, and now the Gemara. Amar Rav Avodah Zavasa Darach Balo Pshita Zafasa Tanan Mahu Detema Huadin Afilu Darach Ba V'hai Katani Zafasa Orcha Demilta Katani Kamashmalan. Rava says the requirement to cleanse the wine press applies specifically if the non-Yehudi lined it with pitch. But if you only trod on his grapes in it without lining it with pitch, it is not required. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious? We learned in the Mishnah that cleansing the wine press is necessary if the non-Yehudi lined it with pitch. The Gemara responds, lest you say that the same is true, that it requires cleansing even if he trod on his grapes in it. And the fact that the Mishnah teaches a case where he lined it with pitch is because the Mishnah is teaching the manner in which the matter typically occurs. Therefore, Rava teaches us that this is not the case. Ikade Amri, Amar Rava, Daf Kazavas Aval Darachba, Lo Isagila Benigu, Pshita, Zavasasnan, Maudetema Huadina Pilu Darachba, Behind the Kazavasa, Khadimil Sagani, Kamash Pelan Daf Kazavasa, Aval Darachba, Lo Isagila Beniguf. There are those who say that Rava says cleansing the wine press is effective specifically if the non-Yehudi lined it with pitch. But if he trod on his grapes in it as well, cleansing it is not sufficient to purify the wine press. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? We learned in the Mishnah that cleansing the wine press is sufficient if the non-Yehudi lined it with pitch. The Gemara responds, lest you say that the same is true, and that cleansing is sufficient even if he trod on his grapes in it, and the fact that the Mishnah teaches a case where he lined it with pitch is because the Mishnah is teaching the manner in which the matter typically occurs. Therefore, Rava teaches us that cleansing the wine press is sufficient specifically if he lined it with pitch, but if he trod on his grapes in it, cleansing it is not sufficient. Okay. Ki Avodah, so the comment of Chio. This is similar to an incident involving a certain man who came before Reb Chia. Amar le havli gavra darche dimidake in brackets li atzartai Amar le Rav zil b'hadei v'chazil de la mitzavacht alai bi midrasha azal chaze d'ave shiatve Amar habadai beniguv sagile v'hadei dika'azel v'ate Chaza pila mitute v'haze tehava melech hamra Amar hala sagila beniguv ela bekiluf v'hainu damali chabibi chazi de lo metzavacht chat ale bemidrasha. This is similar to an incident involving a certain man who came before Rabbi Chia and said to him, "Give me a man who will purify my winepress that I purchased from a non-Yehudi." Rabbi Chia said to Rav, "Go with him and see to it that you conduct yourself in such a manner that will not cause people to complain against me in the study hall." Rav went with him and saw that the winepress was very smooth with pitch. Rav said cleansing will certainly be sufficient for this, because it does not absorb the wine. While Rav was going and coming, he saw a crack underneath his feet and saw that it was full of wine. Tanu Abanan. Where was I? Adiel. This is similar involving incident. Okay, I was probably in the middle of this, but I'll start from the beginning. This is similar to an incident involving a certain man who came before Rabbi Chia and said to him, "Give me a man who will purify my winepress that I purchased from a Gentile, from a non-Yehudi." The Rabbi Chia said to Rav, "Go with him and see to it that you conduct yourself in such a manner that will not cause people to complain against me in the study hall." Rav went with him and saw that the winepress was very smooth with pitch. Rav said, "Cleansing will certainly be sufficient for this, because it does not absorb the wine." While Rav was going and coming, he saw a crack beneath his feet. I think that's where we left off, and saw that it was full of wine. He then said, "Cleansing it is not sufficient for this, rather it requires peeling." And this is what my uncle Chavivi meant when he said to me, "See to it that you do not cause people to complain against me in the study hall." Okay? Tanu Abanan, Tanu Abanan, Tanu Abanan, Tanu Abanan, Tanu Abanan. In the realm of Tanu Abanan. Here we are. Tanu Hagasa Machatz, Piamashpech Shel Goyim, Rabbi Matir בניגוב ורחם אויסרים ומודה רבי בקנקנים של גויים שהן אסורים. ומה ההפרש בין זה לזה? זה מכניסו בקיום וזה מכניסו בקיום. ושל עץ ושל אבן ינגב אם היו מזופפין אסורים. The sages taught with regard to the winepress and its utensils, the ladle and the funnel, which belong to the non-Yehudim. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi permits them by cleansing, and the rabbis deem them forbidden. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi concedes with regard to earthenware jugs belonging to non-Yehudim that they are forbidden. And what is the difference between this case and that case? This jug contains the wine for storage purposes, and that case involving a ladle and a funnel involves utensils that do not contain it for storage purposes, but only temporarily. And if the wine press or its utensils are fashioned of wood or stone, one must cleanse them, but if they were lined with pitch, they are forbidden. And cleansing is not sufficient to render them permitted. The Gemara raises an objection to the last clause of the Braita. But didn't we learn in the Mishnah that in the case of a stone wine press and a non-Yehudi lined with pitch, one may cleanse it and it is pure? The Gemara answers, the Mishnah is referring to a case where the non-Yehudi did not tread on his grapes in it, whereas the Braita is referring to a case where he trod on his grapes in it. Amama hagat v'hamachatz v'hamashpech shel goyim Rabbi matir b'nigu v'chachamim o'esrin v'anan tanan shel cheres af al pi shekalaf et hazefet הרי זו אסורה. אמר רבי ספא דמתניתי נתן לרבנן. The master said above, with regard to the wine press and the ladle and the funnel that belong to the non-Yehudim, Rabbi Yehuda and Nasi permits them a cleansing, and the rabbis deemed them forbidden. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah that if the wine press is of earthenware, even if one peeled off the pitch, this press is forbidden? Rava said in the last clause of the Mishnah, we arrive at the opinion of the rabbis. Doash Love Nava Artachu Rava ki hava mishadar gulfe garpanya sachef lehu apumayu v'chatem lehu abir tzayu kasavar kol davar shemachniso l'kiyum afilu lefi sha'a gazru be-rabanan. Rava taught, if one has a tank of wine used by non-Yehudim, he must scald it in order to render permitted for use. When Rava would dispatch empty kegs to Harpanya, he would turn them over, placing them in their sacks on their openings, and seal the sacks on their brims, so that the non-Yehudi carriers would not be able to use them for wine. He maintained that with regard to anything that is used to contain wine for storage, even if the wine may be stored in it only temporarily, the sages decreed that it is forbidden for use as though it had contained wine. Bame menagvan Rav Amar b'mayim Rabba Barba Chana Amar be'efer. Rav Amar b'mayim v'lo be'efer. Rav Barba Chana Amar be'efer v'lo b'mayim ela. The Gemara asks with regard to the cleansing mentioned in the Mishnah, how does one cleanse a wine press or utensils used by a non-Yehudi for wine? Rav says one cleanses it with water. Rabba Bar Chana says one cleanses it with ashes. The Gemara asks, when Rav says one cleans it with water, cleanses it or cleans it with water, does he mean only with water and not with ashes as well? Furthermore, when Rabba Bar Chana says one cleans it with ashes, does he mean only with ashes and not with water as well? Rather, Their statements must be understood as follows.